I had high hopes for the new Superman movie, and I know Warner Brothers did too. Where Marvel has done well in the past, DC has been struggling, and so they really need a winner of a movie to finally kick off a DC universe that will do well. The real question is, did this film do that, or will DC forever be stuck in a cycle of making not great live-action movies? So I want to start off by saying that I did enjoy watching this movie. It was fun and action-packed, and if we were going purely off of that, my score for this film would be pretty high. However, on this channel, we don't just look at if the movie was enjoyable to watch. I feel like good writing and a good story is super important to a film, and it's something that seems to be lacking in a lot of movies nowadays. And Superman is no exception to that. So I'm going to first give my score, and then we'll analyze the movie. For story, I gave it a 4 out of 10. Its 3-act structure got a 2 out of 10, craft was a 5 out of 10, and my enjoyment of the film was a 7 out of 10. So overall, it got a 4.5 out of 10. Like I said before, I did really enjoy this movie. It was like a non-stop action-packed comic. It was bright and colorful, and it felt quite a bit like a superhero film. It definitely was not like Man of Steel, which I think was a little dark for Superman. However, saying that, I do feel like the action rarely stopped, and there were very few moments to breathe, and so when the movie ended, I felt a little exhausted. It was like a fun roller coaster ride that didn't give you enough time to appreciate the scenery around you before it was over. And that leads me to talking about its 3-act structure. Superman's structure was virtually non-existent. And before anyone says, well, not every movie needs to follow this 3-act structure, I would say maybe you're right. But every great movie out there follows it, and for good reason. The 3-act structure allows us to follow the hero on his journey in pursuit of his want, and lets us watch where he falls and how he learns and grows. With Superman, we were dropped right in the middle of Act 2. I heard a review earlier this week that said it felt like a really, really long television episode. And I agree, and I think part of that was where the movie started. Many television episodes begin in the 2nd act, and that is because in order to keep you hooked and coming back each week, a lot of shows will begin a new 1st act at the end of the previous episode. It baits you into wanting to know what happens next. With Superman, we were denied seeing that 1st act, and it caused major issues, in my opinion, for the film. On the 3-act structure, the hero needs to start off with a want and a desire to pursue that want. And by pursuing that want, the hero creates other issues that they will have to solve and encounter throughout the rest of the film. The pursuit of the want propels the character into the 2nd act. I think we can all agree that Superman's want was to save the people of Jampuria from being invaded, and by doing so created a lot of other issues with the backlash he gets and him trying to stay true to the hero he is. But instead of letting us see that, we were told it by on-screen text. So now we as the audience, instead of clearly knowing what Superman's want is, what he did, or even just knowing what the country of Jampuria was, we were left with a broken Superman and no idea how he got there. Now we did get a 3rd act, and there are some flaws with it as well, but it was done well. When moving from Act 2 to Act 3, our hero needs to have a realization of self, an aha moment, a moment of accepting what they need instead of chasing their want, and using that to defeat the bad guy or overcome whatever obstacle was in their way. For Superman, the whole film was focused on that. While Superman technically is an alien, he is just as human as the rest of us, and his need was to accept that he makes mistakes and that he can learn and grow from them, and that he doesn't have to feel like he's different from everyone just because he has superpowers. My only issue with that was it felt like the whole film led up to that moment by constantly beating Superman up physically, instead of showing the more reflectiveness of Superman coming to terms with the fact that maybe he has made mistakes and figuring out how he's going to make those mistakes right. Moving on to story, there were some things I really liked about the story. I liked that we were 3 months into Lois and Clark's relationship. We've already gotten multiple movies of Superman where Lois is trying to figure out who Superman is, so it was nice to have one where she already knows, and we are seeing some of the ups and downs of that relationship. I also loved the addition of the Justice Gang. I didn't love Hawkgirl as much. She felt a little useless, and her only role was to get rid of the president of Baravia. But Green Lantern was amazing, probably my favorite character in the whole film, and Mr. Terrific honestly stole the show in almost every scene he was in. There were also some minor details that really added to the film, like Superman saving a dog and a squirrel, showing he values all life, not just human life. And then there was Krypto. I liked that Krypto had many dog-like tendencies, like chasing after the drones shaped like balls. However, I have many issues with Krypto. Issue number 1, Krypto is supposed to be Superman's dog. In every iteration of Krypto, at least what I've seen, he is Superman's dog and Superman's best friend. Issue number 2, Krypto should be a well-trained superhero dog. This dog was not. He was unruly and honestly a little annoying. He was cute, I'll give him that, and I can see what they were going for with him being Supergirl's dog, but all I wanted when I saw that Krypto was going to be in this film was Krypto being freaking awesome and being Superman's dog. And I think they could have done that while still giving him a little of the character they gave him, and with the major plot points he served. And I think Superman being upset that Krypto was taken by Lex Luthor would have hit harder if it had been his dog. I get that you would be upset losing someone else's dog because you don't want them mad that you lost their dog, but when it's your own dog, you'd do literally anything to get them back. At least I would. So that brings something to the story that didn't make much sense to me. We weren't let in on the fact that Superman was watching Krypto for someone else until way later in the film. So I spent most of the movie wondering why Superman hates his own dog so much, why he hadn't trained his dog, and if he didn't seem to care much for him, why he was willing to move Earth and Moon to get him back. Something else that really bothered me was that up until basically the end, Superman didn't get himself out of a single situation. There was always someone else, Krypto, a member of the Justice Gang, but never Superman. And so part of me was thinking a better story would have been Superman has been saving Earth by himself for so long, he's gotten used to doing it himself. And then these other metahumans show up and start fighting bad guys too. And Superman doesn't know what to think of that. He's never had people fighting with him in a superhero capacity before, and so he struggles trusting them. Maybe worries if he's not there that even just one person might get hurt. And eventually he has to learn to accept their help, and it is kind of the beginning of the Justice League. Instead, the relationship between these characters as they were in the movie, I felt weren't developed enough. For example, during the scene when Clark and Lois are talking and the rest of the Justice Gang are fighting the weird tentacle eyeball monster, Superman would never leave others to fight unless he was sure that they had it handled and no one would get hurt. And so I'd like to see a story where he learns that he can completely trust Guy Gardner and Mr. Terrific to not let anyone get hurt. And speaking of relationships, the relationship between Superman and Lex Luthor was super unclear. I couldn't tell if Lex had been preemptively studying Superman so he could beat him to avoid Superman ruining his plans, or if they had met before and battled before. And it made Lex's plans a little weak and confusing. It felt like a giant circle. He's made all these plans to stop Superman, but he's never fought Superman. So how does he know how to stop Superman other than by watching him and stalking him, basically? But why watch and observe Superman unless he's sure Superman will come after him, and he can only be sure if Superman will come after him if Superman's come after him before. But we don't know if they've fought before, and so we get stuck in this loop. I did really like that the evidence to stop Lex Luthor's plans were in Eve's selfies. I thought that was very clever. My last big thing in the story was Ma and Pa Kent. I actually really liked them and loved the scene with Pa Kent telling Clark that it's our choices that make us who we are, which then plays into his need to realize he can make mistakes and that he is as human as everyone else. But I think that moment would have hit a lot harder if we were given more of Ma and Pa Kent and Clark's relationship with them. We got the scene toward the beginning and then basically that scene, and I just wanted more. Now, as far as craft goes, there were a few issues for me. One I've already discussed. The writing in the story was kind of terrible. Costuming also I wasn't a huge fan of, mostly with Guy Gardner's bowl cut. I know he has that haircut in many of the comics, but I wanted him to look cool. And then Superman's suit just looked a little off. It looked like it didn't quite fit and that the fabric was a little too thick in places. There were also a few too many jokes. Some of the jokes I found funny, but there were quite a few I felt were unnecessary and a little annoying. I also don't know if James Gunn was the right person to direct this film. It felt a little too Guardians of the Galaxy to me, which, while it did make the film fun, took away a little bit of the seriousness that Superman needs. We don't need to go full Man of Steel serious. but I think there still needed to be a little bit more than there was. I was also extremely disappointed that we never, not once, got a complete Superman theme. I appreciate that part of the theme was there, but it felt cheap to take 2 bars of the theme and play it over and over and over again. I wanted one complete theme, just one. On the other side, though, I thought the casting of this film was spot on. Every actor played their character well. I really liked David Cornsweet as Superman. I was unsure if I was going to, but he really felt like Superman to me. And every other character was amazing, especially Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. I can't tell you how much I loved his character, how they wrote him. He was basically perfect, except for that terrible bowl cut they gave him. The CGI in the film was also pretty good. There were a few moments where some of the CGI you could tell it was CGI, or Krypto started drifting off into the uncanny valley, but honestly, if you weren't looking super hard, it was easy to miss. So there's my analysis of Superman. Even though it's gotten a low score from me, I did enjoy the movie, and I can see why people are loving it so much, and why others are hating it. In my book, I don't know if it's a win or not, but I honestly hope the movie ends up doing well, at least well enough to continue a DC universe. I've always been more of a DC girl than a Marvel girl, and I just really want to see multiple Justice League movies. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of this film, and if there was a DC character you would want to see a movie about, what would it be?